This is Tom Kane, the voice of Yoda in Star Wars The Clone Wars, and you're listening to Coffee with Kenobi with Dan Z. This is the podcast you're looking for.
Omega, see if you can convince him to get his hand looked at. Ignoring it won't make the problem go away.
Got greedy. Took out a couple of top bosses for the Haxian Brood and escaped with a cache of credits. Powerful people want him found. The other hunters that went after him never came back.
You've missed a lot.
I know.
Now, close your eyes and focus.
This is Vanessa Marshall, Harrison Dula from Star Wars Rebels, and you're listening to Coffee with Kenobi.
Here we are, friends. It is time to talk about the next episode of Star Wars Season 3 of The Bad Batch. This episode, the 8th episode again, is called Bad Territory, but I've got some good people to navigate this bad territory. We're going to talk all about the title, all about what happens in it, and other themes and ideas that you might be thinking about as well, and maybe we'll introduce an idea that you hadn't talked about before. Now, when I say we, I've got two guests joining me to talk about this episode. First, returning guest for all episodes of Star Wars The Bad Batch on Coffee with Kenobi, Mason Zehr. Mason, welcome back to the show, bud.
Thank you. It's great to be back again.
All right. I'm looking forward to your thoughts on this. You and I did a pretty good job of not totally talking about it. So this will be more of a fresh conversation. We've also got another guest. It has been far too long since we had the pleasure of talking to him. Of course, we talk all the time online, text message, and I hear the dulcet tones of his voice along with Aaron Harris. Every week on Star Wars Reactions, I am talking about the one and only David Motters. David, welcome back to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me back. It's good to be on with both of you.
Yes, it's going to be fun. We're looking forward to talking about this one again. It's the 8th episode. So after this, we're we're halfway through season 3. We've only got 8 episodes left of this. And this is also the last episode I was able to get a media preview of. So here on out, everything is just going to be unknown and a little bit scary. But we're going to talk about that. David, let's start with you on this. As you know, we give one word to describe the episode and overall thoughts. Tell us what you thought about Bad Territory and give us one word.
This is easy for me. You know, I listen to you and Mason every week, and I listen to your words for this when I watched it. It's darkness. 2 reasons. One, just the way that the creative shot it, very dark, except for on Pabu. All that was pretty well lit, but very dark. And really how it pays homage to George Lucas's friend, Francis Ford Coppola, in his movie Apocalypse Now, right? And I was looking this up earlier, Dan, before we jumped on. I was like, wait, I know Francis Ford Coppola directs it, but then I started reading more, and I didn't realize that Apocalypse Now is based loosely on the novella Heart of Darkness.
By Joseph Conrad.
Yep, back 1899. And so Heart of Darkness, how it's lit, and again, just an homage to Francis Ford Coppola. But Apocalypse Now vibes over the whole thing, but darkness throughout the whole thing. So that's my one word.
I love that. That's what a nice catch. George Lucas is very heavily involved in Apocalypse Now, too. Mason, what about you? What's one word and overall thoughts on the episode?
My one word is waiting for this episode, because you have that feeling like when the bad guy, I'll call him the giant ant, when he's like hiding in the trees, he's waiting and waiting till the perfect moment. You know, when they come across those mines, they have to wait for them to make those go off. So I just thought that was my word.
I like it. I had to look it up. I wasn't sure what the name of that little critter is. His name is Sylar Saris. His nickname is the Slayer of Ordo Eris. So I'm sure there's a fun little story. Fun, maybe not so fun for the people who are a part of it. But that is who that character is. My one word for this is dichotomous. I found this to be, there's a lot of duplicity, a lot of double-sided things going on here. Fennec Shand is a very dichotomous character. You don't quite know where she stands, who she's going to support, especially now. If this were after season 1 of the Book of Boba Fett, I don't think I would say that. But this is way before she meets Boba Fett or Din Djarin. So there's that. Plus, this episode kind of has it's basically 2 stories that are sewn together well. So there's two kinds of things going on here, and that's why I think of the dichotomous nature of this particular thing. But I really like that Heart of Darkness thing. That's really smart, especially the second half. But the way this thing starts, again, we've got basically two things going on here. Before we meet Sylar Saris, there's Omega, and Omega is frustrated. David, talk about Omega and Crosshair's relationship. Not their relationship, I'm sorry. We know we see a lot of that, but at the beginning of this, they have a really interesting conversation. Omega is taking on some of that blame, and I think that's understandable. I don't think it's warranted, but because of who she is as a character, it doesn't surprise me she's like that.
Yeah, she's a go-getter. She wants to make things better. I think it was even, I was watching, what is it? Extraction again, the last two episodes from last week, and how she's focused in telling, Rex and Wolf, not Rex and Hauser, forgive me. How she's like, we tried to get people out, we just couldn't do it. And so this is a primary focus, loving, caring person. She's empathic, and she's someone who's changing Crosshair as we speak. It's hard to keep her from being a part of this. I was curious to see if at the beginning there, Dan, that when Hunter was saying, hey, it's just going to be me and Wrecker, if she was going to really battle him. And sometimes she does, and they agree. And this time they said, no, we need to keep you safe, and we're going to figure out more of this. But she's a great character, a loving, caring character, smart, and wants to help her brothers.
Mm-hmm. It's true. She also takes on that responsibility. Rex lost a lot of his men. Rex and Echo lost a lot of their men because of me, and because Hemlock is chasing me. And she says, I need to help. And Crosshair says, you can help by laying low. Hunter pops him right away and says, you're right, or he's right. And then they get an announcement, a hologram, or a call from Fee. From a call, from Fee. Basically, she's going to help them try to figure out what an M count is, because they have to get in touch with a bounty hunter, because the Empire's been sending out a lot of bounty hunters for these M count bounties. And Mason, you and I actually talked about this during the show, but what does that make you think of when you hear about this?
I just think those bounty
hunters,
especially
with bounty hunters,
the Empire didn't want more Jedi to come, and so they thought if anyone had any little bit of M count, they had to stop that or kill them, so they couldn't have more Jedis against them. I hadn't thought about it from that perspective, but this is all part of Palpatine's thing that he starts doing in the Clone Wars, and we see that in Rebels too, where he's trying to collect people who might be force sensitive, and that's what the M count thing is too. We're still sort of unknown about how that affects Omega, or whether it's just her blood happens to be a catalyst for that kind of a thing. I don't want to get too much into the whole speculation thing naturally, because as you know, friends, speculation without regulation equals fan constipation. At least that's my Dan Zehr math. Mason's giving me a look like, what? But it's interesting. It made me think of The Mandalorian and Grogu, because that's where we see a lot of stuff with the M count, obviously testing Grogu's blood. That is also years after Return of the Jedi. So again, there's a big time difference here between this and when we would see The Mandalorian. But if the Emperor's been doing this for this long, David, at least with using bounty hunters, that to me really kind of ties things together quite well.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's brilliant how they're doing this whole thing and bringing these characters back around. I love seeing Fennec at a younger age, and it's a scary concept here. If you're out there in the world, not only has Order 66 gone down, but you're in hiding, and now you not only have to look out for stormtroopers, but bounty hunters as well. Like you said, it also ties forward to I can even see Vader standing on the bridge of the Star Destroyer, and one of the first times, Dan, you and I saw bounty hunters, back in 1980.
That's right.
Yeah, they're used throughout to play different critical roles.
Yeah, and that is the first time. Yeah, honestly, I mean, we might have seen it like in an episode of the Dukes of Hazzard or something. I don't know. I'm not sure time wise how that would have worked, but you know what I mean. Then we go to this cantina because Hunter and Wrecker are going to leave. Crosshair is going to stay behind with Omega, and they go into this cantina, and we see Fennec Shand, and Fennec Shand is talking to a Rhodian. I don't know if it's Greedo. They don't ever say the name of the character. And at the time of this recording, Stars.com is not released their episode analysis of all of the episodes. So we don't know yet. It may just be a Rhodian that has a very similar taste and vests. That could be. What do we think about Fennec Shand? Just overall, the way she behaves in this episode. You can talk about anything from any part of the episode itself. But as I said, the word was dichotomous, that she's a main reason for that. Mason, what do you think about Fennec Shand in this episode?
I think just like the Bad Batch were saying, you do whatever you do as long as you can make money. She's not good or bad. She's definitely a bounty hunter.
Really? You don't think she's good or bad?
No.
She's
think
neutral.
She can switch.
Okay. Interesting. David, what do you think?
Well, this is where I need the background, Dan, that you and Tom Gross, in Dungeons and Dragons in terms of the neutral, chaotic neutral, and I don't know all that. I'm not a D&D guy, so
yeah.
What would you and Tom say she is?
So she would. So lawful indicates that you have some scruples. It kind of depends on whether, because you could be lawful evil, where you're still evil and you do bad things, but you still stick to a code. So I would probably put her at lawful neutral, because like Mason said, she can go either way. She doesn't really care as long as she gets her credits, but she's lawful because she sticks to her word, or she says she'll stick to her word. But then we've got that ambiguous ending that makes it a little bit unclear too. I'm just going to say she drives me nuts in this episode. She drove me nuts earlier in the Bad Batch. Because it's hard. She's a hard one because in Book of Boba Fett and second part of Mando, besides the first time she shows up, she's very easy to root for and she's very appealing. But in this, she's just so conniving and disenfranchising because of how she treats people. And we are built to love the Bad Batch, and the fact that she, puts them through all this stuff and completely keeps it one-sided, I find really, really frustrating, but that means the character's doing her job. And there is a part on that boat later where those creatures are there, those alligator hybrid things, where she saves one of the Bad Batch's lives. She pulls them back. So, and it doesn't really get acknowledged. In fact, it happened so quickly, I said to Mason, wait, did she just save his life? And Mason says, yeah. So there's some interesting things. It'd be interesting to hear what Ross thought about her too, since he's such a big Fennec Shand fan.
Yeah, I think for me, I guess I don't find her frustrating. I see her as part of the process here. And I thought about this before I got on with you guys. I had mentioned this to Jason Fry. We had him on for the season premiere, the 3-episode thing. And he's a big sports fan. He's a big Mets guy. And I know you, Dan, are a big Bulls guy. I grew up in Michigan. And so there's the bad boys and all that stuff, but the 2004 team were NBA champs. They weren't the bad boys, but they had a player named Chauncey Billups.
Yep. Chauncey Billups. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. So good. And they were defending NBA champions, and they're playing Game 6 in San Antonio, trying to win back-to-back NBA titles. And they win Game 6, and they interviewed Chauncey Billups afterwards. And he said a saying that I've never forgotten from June 2005. He says, if it ain't rough, it ain't right. And, I think about how, I don't know, how easy Jordan made it look winning 6 titles. He's just so good. Other teams, didn't happen. The Pistons didn't win like that. Jordan and the Bulls are just beyond good. So that's what I think about here through this process that you're describing when you put a Fennec Shand in there when you have the alligators, when you're going up the river, just like Apocalypse Now, when they're heading towards Marlon Brando, it's rough. And I keep thinking to myself, here's episode 8. How much longer it's just the process and this difficult whole journey. But if it's not difficult, then there's not going to be, I think, that elation of, figuring this out and getting to Tantus, like Rex said last time, and freeing their brothers. So I think it's that climb, and Fennec is part of creating a frustration in us and in the Bad Batch.
Yeah, that's very well said. Boy, you are on your A game, buddy. I love it.
Hey, buddy. Hey.
Yeah, that's so good. And you're right. You're right. There is. I think that's an essential part of her, because if everyone is altruistic and squeaky clean, then there's really not any conflict. You need to have conflict in this episode. Crosshair is all the conflict he needs internally, but when we see Wrecker and Hunter with Fennec on this boat, it looks like a swamp boat, right, from the Everglades of Florida. And then we are told, you can't go in the water. And I just popped into my head. I just go crazy with this water stuff. But the fact that Fennec won't jump in the water means she's not willing to change. She won't change. She also wants to save her skin. But from a metaphorical perspective, she is not interested in being anything different than who she is. And to be fair, that's kept her alive. Right? Her approach has kept her alive and kept her be very successful, because early in the episode, Fee does say there's a certain class of bounty hunter that the Empire is using. So you have to be the best of the best to be a part of this entire experience. Mm-hmm. Mason, you had talked earlier about the mystery of chasing. Is it Sylar? Did we say Sylar or Skylar? Sylar. 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 Yeah, Sylar's sneaking around. Talk about the action in this episode, Mason, because is it fair to say that this one was took a little bit more for you to get into, because it kind of is more of a slow burn?
Yeah, it really just waited till basically the very end until they finally had the action. And then when he did, he jumped on Hunter, I think, or maybe it was Wrecker. I'm pretty sure it was Hunter. And then when he goes underground, Wrecker says he went underground, and she says underground. And he goes, "You heard me."
That was good.
And then Fennec cuts the cables on the boat, and Sylar tries to run away, but he can't because she cut those. And then he checks, and he's like, "Oh no, she did." And she says, "You're not getting away this time."
And Mason, what did you think when Hunter goes in that small little cabin-y thing, swamp cabin, and Sylar is on the ceiling?
As soon as he entered, I thought, "Oh no, he's going to be on the ceiling." And then sure enough, he's hiding in the shadows.
And it was creepy, because you point out to me, I said, didn't they blast? Because they keep using the stun option of their blaster, but it doesn't work right away. And Mason, you observe why that is.
He has to take multiple shots. My guess is because his skin is built with some sort of armor or something like that.
Yeah, he's a crustacean. He's like an insect, or a crustacean. So he's got a natural body armor, that thick hide. So that's pretty cool. We've never really seen that in Star Wars. So it's almost like when you stun someone, they're stunned. It works through Stormtrooper armor, but not through Sylar's hide.
Yeah. Reminds me of the Zilla Beast, right? I mean, it's got an armor on it. Massively difficult to get through, but he reminds me of I kept thinking about this, and I knew I'd get on with you guys, and I'm like, oh my gosh, is this the ultimate praying mantis on steroids? This thing was great. And just the mouth and putting it down towards Hunter and Wrecker and stuff. And at one point, I had to watch it a second time. Did you guys see at one point that the Sylar Saris, he spits out and covers Wrecker's whole face mask? I was like, oh my gosh.
And then next time they record, he's perfectly not one. Must use his hand and cleaned it off.
Yeah. Boom.
He had a special spray. I noticed that too. That it was very creepy. It was very well set up. And I've actually never seen Apocalypse Now. I'm very familiar with it. I've seen plenty of stills about it. But this sequence in the water with the gators, for lack of a better term, And then with Sylar and the confrontation, is there something that happens similar to that in Apocalypse Now, or is it just kind of more the overall ambiance?
Oh, it's definitely the ambiance. I watched it many years ago, and like you, Dan, whether it's Full Metal Jacket, if it's Platoon, and even this, I do not like these movies. They're just so difficult to watch. Brutal.
Yes.
There's a scene where Marlon Brando, kind of like the Gators, he comes up bald head, comes up out of the water and is looking at those individuals who are coming up to get him. And so there's some of that similarity. I've tried to block out most of the movie, but definitely the ambiance and going up the river and getting to the place where Marlon Brando is, just the same thing where Sylar Saris is, kind of a hut type kind of situation. So pretty close there.
The reason that Fennec has him is because she's never had a crew with her to try to capture him. He's very slippery. He's very agile. He's very ferocious and aggressive. But ultimately, with a lot of stun blasts, they were able to subdue him. And Wrecker just throws him over his shoulder like he's a bag of flour, and then off we go. So that's all fun. That's exciting. I thought the stuff with the mines was good. Was suspenseful because don't go in the water. They both got to go in there. You can't even breathe this atmosphere because it's so toxic. And Fennec is sort of a toxic person, really, anyway. And then they get out again, very suspenseful. But to me, as fun as that is, as exciting as that is, as mysterious and haunting as it is, nothing is better than the stuff with Crosshair and Omega. Yeah. The before they leave, before Hunter and Wrecker leave, Hunter whispers to Omega. He very much empowers her, so it could be a bit of a distraction ploy that parents use. But more than likely, while there is an aspect of that is beneficial, it's really more that he knows she will get through to Crosshair. See if you can get Crosshair to get that hand checked out. And we learn there's nothing medically wrong with the hand. Now, we're here with someone who happens to be an expert in mental health. David, what do you think's going on with Crosshair?
I love this. And I knew that you'd seen the first 8. You had mentioned this, and I thought maybe you wanted me on for this one because of this aspect. And so you truly are my brother.
That's right.
So no, this is right up my alley. So I love this. Hunter makes a statement, like you said, Dan, very quietly to Omega, ignoring the problem won't make it go away. And, I work in a medical setting, and so the physicians are trying to help the body. I'm helping the mind in terms of depression, anxiety, all the behavioral health issues. And so, as you know this, Dan, and Mason will learn this as he gets older, there's a number of men who want to ignore the problem. Oh, I'm not having chest pain. And, your wife is like, can you please go and see the doctor? That's where the wife wants to wring your neck. And don't ignore those problems. And so in our country, we've had an even bigger problem with ignoring mental health issues. And so for the creatives to put that in there, to have Hunter say that to Omega, and then to bring it full circle where they're meditating at the end of the episode. And I don't know if you want me to jump into that, Dan, or just
please do.
Well, and so like you said, they start, and I'm with you, that the whole storyline with Crosshair and Omega is much more interesting to me because of that. Not only because of Hunter basically making a statement, don't ignore your mental health issues and physical health issues, but at the end, just to hear Omega say meditation, and she learned it from who? From Gunji and the Wookiees on Kashyyyk, right? Mm-hmm. Well, something that I was going to share, and Dan, you know that I do a psychology corner. I've shortened it to a psychology factoid just because of time and all that kind of stuff. Sure. But can I do a little mini psychology CWK version of the psychology corner here? So in terms of meditation, we can even ask Mason, are you in a culture that promotes this? The three of us are not raised in a culture that promotes meditation. We're not raised with it. Dan, you weren't. You're born in Louisiana, me in Michigan. It doesn't matter what state, north, south, east, west. Our culture does not do this. Now, let me bring around Amy Ratcliffe's book, The Jedi Mind. All right. Yes. And So I wanted to bring this up because, and I hope this helps listeners, right, of your show, that, for 31 years I've been a psychologist, and you ask most people, Dan, are you good at meditation? 99 to 100% of my clients say, no, David, I'm not good at meditation. So what's beautiful in Amy's book is at the beginning, she says, listen, I'm an anxious person and I'm not very good at some of this stuff. So what she does is she does consult with Dr. Andrea Letamendi, a clinical psychologist at UCLA, and of course, one of the podcast hosts of Arkham Sessions. And they put this together. And what's beautiful, Dan, is she gives all these other options to meditate, or forgive me. Meditation is one way to mindfulness, all these other ways to be mindful. Now, in this episode, Omega is talking about meditation. What I love in Amy's book, and I've picked out a number of different things that she presents, I use them to help me to be mindful and to calm myself. And so I wanted to share that with you, that I would encourage people to get it, flip to any page in Amy's book, and pick something that you like to help you be mindful. Meditation is but one way. If you can do it, great. If you cannot, pick something else.
Thank you for that. I appreciate that. And you're right. That was definitely an inspiration to have you on, because I knew you'd have an insightful and professional way to talk about this as an expert. The expert for meditation is Gunji, because Gunji is a Jedi. Gunji's lived through a lot with Order 66 and the rise of the Empire and his kind being eradicated. That's the Emperor's plan, as we well know. So with this, she says to him, she tries to get him to meditate. There's this beautiful scene where, again, because there's nothing physically wrong with him, something happened to him when he was under lock and key with hemlock, or it could be whatever. When your hand, why would your hand shake, David, if there was nothing physically wrong? What would that be?
Well, I think we should go to, our wheelhouse, Dan, to, NBA basketball. You and I love it, and of course I loved watching Jordan, made sure I saw him play live, had to before he retired.
Mason, also massive NBA fan.
Oh my gosh, Mason, we got to talk. And so my son has really pulled me back in after I was away for a while, but watching a lot of NBA basketball with my son. But you guys know this, and I think maybe, Mason, you wrapped up your basketball season. But, when you get an NBA player, college player, you name it, who psychologically is psyching himself out, it's a lot harder to shoot a free throw, right? Your hand isn't quite where it needs to be. Are you getting it up, elbow, wrist, ball, follow through, pour the pitcher into the net? And so that's what I think about. Now, again, it's a tough one with Crosshair because he's been gassed. We see Hemlock hold his hand in the same way. I do wonder. I'm not sure. I mean, I guess, Dan, I was going to check with you and Mason. When AZ was speaking, I couldn't remember if he said they've ruled out everything or they've tried everything medically. I still just wonder if it's some damage from what Hemlock did via torture or the injections or whatever, or the gas. But if it's none of that, then we call it having the yips or something, like in baseball or golf or
right.
That's what I think about having the shaky hand. But I still haven't, in my mind, ruled out that there's not a physical causation.
I'm trying to find, or do you remember, Mason? Do you remember?
Does AZ? I don't have it up. I thought he says, well, Omega, we've tried everything. And Omega says, isn't there anything else you can do? And he's like, no, I don't know anything else to do.
Omega says there's nothing else you can do. And he says, I've exhausted all medical treatment options. Perhaps the issue is not something physical.
Again, perhaps not something physical. In my mind, it still might be something physical.
Yeah, it's psychosomatic, I think. I think so. Yeah, something has got him upset where he doesn't trust himself anymore. And that might be what ends up happening. He doesn't trust himself because of the decisions he has made. And now it's made him be impotent to the one way that he really defined himself was his marksmanship. So it's really cool. But she sits up there at the top of that mountain with him on Pabu, and his hands are clenched and down, but then she turns his hand to keep it open. She holds his hand for a second to show support and love, but she makes his hand stay open. That means he is open. You can't see it on the video because there is no video for this recording, but she's open to it. She's open to the world. She's open to nature. He's open to possibilities. He's showing an openness to trying to heal himself. And when you're anxious, you hold your breath, right? And, it makes it harder. You're making it harder for yourself, for your brain to, I don't know the science of it, David, you certainly know it backwards and forwards, but that's what happens when you're anxious and you hold your breath. Why is that such a problem for people?
Well, part of the issue, and I talk about this all the time in my office with clients, if you look at us as humans, if you look at us from an evolutionary biological perspective, right? And I was trained in that by my professors getting my degrees in grad school. Or if we look at it from a faith-based perspective, which, Dan, you've talked about on your show, we've talked about on our show.
Yes.
If we look at it from both perspectives, there's not a disagreement between an evolutionary biological perspective or a faith-based perspective that anxiety has been at the core of us from the very beginning of time. Mm-hmm. So it's at our core. Now, you brought up something interesting, and here's a big challenge for humans, right? When we're anxious, you see, the tensing of muscles and the shallow breath. You can experience that one of two ways, right? When people's breaths are shallow and muscles are tense, they either find themselves angry, they're mad this way, or they're anxious. And so it's trying to prep. It's trying to prep for fight or flight, right? That's a big core component of us. The other part too, and this is a difficult one, Dan, and I do share this with people. Okay, here's another psychology corner. You and I have a limbic brain, our reptilian brain. So if we go in right about the ears here, it's our brain stem. It's there for Mason, you, me, for all humans. Sitting right on top of our brain stem is what's called the amygdala. And the amygdala is the warning system for all three of us and everybody listening. Danger, danger, danger. Mason, avoid those people. Dan, avoid them. Hey, that car's coming at us fast. The three of us should get away from that. Hey, that stove is hot. Don't touch it, etc. Now, there's a little strip of brain. I'm pointing right here above my eyebrows, but it's right behind my eyebrows, right on top of my eyes. It's called the prefrontal cortex. Unfortunately, as humans, it's little teeny strip. It's not big. I would like it to be much bigger. Why? Because it addresses that amygdala. There's a brilliant book called Emotional Intelligence by Dr. Daniel Goleman, Harvard-educated psychologist, and he explains the anatomy of an emotional hijacking, which is the three of us can have our prefrontal cortex working, clarity of thought, problem solving, thinking things through, but that amygdala, Dan, in our brainstem can overwhelm us very quickly, and here's anxiety, and it comes really fast. And so, unfortunately, as humans, we're really good at being anxious. Again, I would say this, we've talked about it, Dan, from a faith-based perspective. I ask people all the time, whether they're Jewish, Christian, or Muslim, what's the first psychiatric issue we see in the Bible? It's anxiety. They hide. Adam and Eve hide immediately. Anxiety. Now, we see depression throughout Scripture, but anxiety and anxiety issues are the very first psychiatric issue in Scripture. And so it's at the core of all of us. Now, what's beautiful, like you were just describing, Dan, is we as humans have tried to create different ways to address anxiety. What I love, and the message from the creatives here, from, again, Brad Rao and Jennifer Corbett, is instead of surgery, AZ doesn't do surgery or medication, hey, let's do something that's non-medical to help you. And so here she is showing him the proper posture and how to do this. I love that, to be able to calm himself and to help him be mindful. And I think what you're going to end up seeing is that shakiness go away.
I agree. And I definitely think it's psychosomatic. And also the fact that we're having these questions and talking about this, I can't thank you enough for sharing that insight, because these are real life applications that we can take from this. I was actually talking about this with some of my students today. Some of the nice thing about teaching literature or talking about a story is it encourages and promotes empathy, and thinking about things from other people's perspectives and their own points of view. So I think that's pretty good. I'm curious to see last minute thoughts and letter grade on the episode. Mason, let's start with you. I'm really interested to know your letter grade for this one and your last minute thoughts.
Okay, my letter grade for this one will probably be an A- because I didn't love this episode, but the parts when it did have this fun action, it was amazing.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. David, what about you?
Yeah, I think I'm going to go with an A. I was vacillating between Mason's grade, an A- and an A. Not an A+. I definitely think, again, as we get moving on here, that we're going to see A+ episodes. I have no question about that. But the reason why I give it a solid A is because of the psychological undertones or overtones. Like you said, Dan, there's two different stories. And one story, it's absolutely, psychology more than 101. It's psychology 401 and 501. This is good stuff. And I'm thankful that they're presenting it in this show. I never expect it from these shows, but when they do, it's really cool.
Fantastic. I'm actually going to give this one a B-. That's not bad. It's still good, but I think if my rubric is the rest of the season, then for me this is the least. The one I will gravitate towards the least. If it was only Crosshair and Omega, I think it would be an A+. And there's nothing wrong with the stuff with Hunter and Wrecker. That part of it didn't move me in the same way. It's effective, and I don't think it's filler. I've never understood that concept. I've never found that the word filler, I've never found to be authentic criticism. I think I don't think there's such a thing as filler when you're working hard to create this kind of stuff. You have to have the whole piece, and we don't have the whole piece. But it has some great thrills. The camera work and the lighting is really, really nice. And again, Crosshair and Omega are just an absolute breath of fresh air every single time.
Listening to Coffee with Kenobi, you are with Dan Z, the podcast you're looking for. This is
As are you, David Motters. Thank you so much for joining us yet again on Coffee with Kenobi. Always appreciate your friendship and your kindness and your wisdom and insights. And you never disappoint. You never disappoint on Star Wars Reactions with Mr. Aaron Harris either. Please let us know what's going on with Star Wars Reactions and where they can find it.
Absolutely. We're busy recording. We're going to record tomorrow night covering this episode, and we'll see how Aaron thinks about it. We're going to have a special guest on, and he's a friend of this show as well, the CWK family. He's part of that. But I came prepared. There's too many of these socials, and you try to keep them all straight, and you don't want to mess them up. So here we go, Dan. All right. Facebook and X, we're at Star Wars Reactions Pod. Instagram, Threads, TikTok, Tumblr, and Blue Sky, we're at Star Wars Reactions. Forgive me, back up, SW Reactions. Email, we're swreactions@gmail.com. We are, if people want to leave a voicemail, they can at speakpipe.com/Star Wars Reactions. And then if you just want to talk Star Wars or talk psychology or any of that kind of stuff, I always say Twitter X is at David_Modders, Modders. And my co-host, Aaron Harris, who I love dearly, and he loves you guys. His Twitter X is at TA Harris 121079.
I love it. Well, thank you, David. As always, you're welcome back anytime. And Mason, where can people find you?
On the basketball court.
On the basketball court it is.
This podcast is not endorsed by the Walt Disney Company or Lucasfilm Limited. It is intended for entertainment and informational purposes only. The official Star Wars website can be found at www.starwars.com. Star Wars, all names, sounds, and any other Star Wars related items are registered trademarks and or copyrights of Disney and their respective trademark and copyright holders. All original content of this podcast is the intellectual property of Coffee with Kenobi unless otherwise indicated.
This is the podcast you're looking for.
There's no one here. Move along.